All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Let me just do, there we go, share screen, and there we are. So how's everybody doing tonight? We're just going to do a random live stream and talk about comics. If anybody wants to listen to that for an hour. We got some regulars in the chat. We got George here, Eric the Guapo. He's saying we started early out of spite. Let's see.
We saw your comment, Eric, and we're like, let's mess with him. Let's start on time.
How do you pronounce this, John?
Olofemi.
Well, it's nice to see you here.
Yeah, it's good
nonetheless.
To see you for regular, even though I can't pronounce your name.
Warren the Archangel is here. So honestly, John, I was just thinking today about really good comics that have to do with alternate dimensions. What do you think off the top of your head when I give you that topic?
Okay, really good comics that have to do with the first thing that popped into my head is I guess my go-to, the Marvel's What If series. You know, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, like in the 70s and 80s, you had regular comics and like it was just one continuity, and then What If came out, and it would be like continuing a Marvel story or going on another. Like, what if Spider-Man did join the Fantastic Four in Spider-Man #1? What would happen? So now they all change to fives, you know what I mean? And then the Watcher would explain that there's infinite dimensions. And I always thought they were fun, and they always ended like sad. You know, what if Jane Foster became Thor instead of Donald Blake? Things like that. What if Magneto had formed the X-Men instead of Xavier? These were a lot of fun.
There was a What If, I think it was from the first run, that I always thought was like, I never really loved What If comics just because there were a lot of throwaway stories. But there was one that really stuck with me, and I don't even remember the number of it. But what it was, and it reminded me when I think it was Iron Man 3 came out, where you had all the suits. I think it was 3, where Tony Stark had all the suits and they were all flying around. But it was when Tony Stark basically gave different color Iron Man suits to a whole bunch of different people. And this is back in the 70s, right? Yeah. This was Gil Kane that did the art for that.
Yeah, I remember that one. And that one was really sad. If I don't want to spoil the ending for it, but man, I did that particular issue for a Sunday Comics a while ago. And everybody would watch. It's like, John, what are you trying to do? You're ruining my Sunday, you know. But that was one of the little luxuries that What If had, because you're not going to kill Spider-Man, you know. And I remember this was an argument in 6th grade. I was at that point in 6th grade. I would bring in comic books. You know, I was known as the comic book guy, and that was my thing. I would bring in comics, and everybody would read comics, and you know, the nuns would let us read comics when we finished our work and kept us quiet. So it's like, oh, and I remember this one kid, Andy, was just like, I'm not interested. And I'm like, how could you not be interested? What is wrong with you? You're a mutant. And he was like, no, he goes, the good guys are going to win. So what's the point of reading them? So I always got countered with that. But that's what If did, is it allowed for sad, tragic endings. That some of them were bittersweet. Some of them were satisfying. And then some of us showed us like, oh, it's a good thing that it happened this way because, you know, the Marvel Universe could continue. You know, I enjoyed What If. What if Wolverine was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? What if
that Rob Liefeld, beautiful cover on there.
One of them was there's so many. Look at these. What if the Punisher's family hasn't been killed?
It's Mike Zeck doing the cover too.
Yeah.
Now I buy that. I did buy that just because of the Mike Zeck cover.
Well, what a fast, like I just love that they're exploring, you know, other threads in the Marvel tapestry. Now, how different would Marvel be if there was no Punisher? You know, I don't remember that issue. I don't have that issue. That did they die someplace else? Well, like they faded to die. You know, did somebody else become the Punisher? You know, what if the X-Men stayed in Asgard? You know, that was at that X-Men annual by Art Adams. You know,
yep.
Everybody loved. What if the Fantastic Four had different powers? Captain Marvel not died. What if Professor X became the Juggernaut? Now that's great.
With the Jim Lee cover. Yeah, they were selling them with the covers by this time.
Yeah.
This was not the art you were getting. You're not getting Jim Lee on the inside.
Yeah, I think that was illustrated by Phil Moskowitz. That's my made up game. What if the Fantastic Four had lost the trial of Galactus? Oh wow, I got to read that one.
There's your what if.
I know. I did a Sunday Comics on the Galactus, and then I also did its clobbering time, and we talked about it, like the philosophy beyond. And I remember that was one of the times I sent you an in-depth email because I know your interest in theology and everything. And I just
actually that might be that might be a little preview for my Saturday video, because I was going to do what we talked about at that point was basically situational ethics and all that kind of stuff, and whether or not it was right for Galactus to do this or not, right? But right. I've been watching the trailers for the Superman movie that's coming out, and I'm going, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I'm probably going to go see the movie just because I want to go see a couple more movies every once in a while, but it does not look like a Superman movie to me. That's to me, Jim Shooter's writing Superman. That's Superman, right? This is not Superman, right, what they're showing on the screen, because it's situational ethics. That's the whole thing. It's like Superman doesn't do situational ethics. He does, this is right and this is wrong. Get out of my way.
And that's why I don't like the Man of Steel. I know people get all mad, and I'm not trying to hurt any Snyder guys. Fail, I'm not one of these people. I don't hate Zack Snyder, but I just felt like in that scene when Pa Kent says to him, "You shouldn't have saved those kids." I was just like, no. Pa Kent would have been, "You did the right thing. We'll figure it out." You know what I mean? But the funny punchline to that story that I was leading up to. So I wrote this big email. I'm going to talk about the trial of Reed Richards. Do you remember that issue? And blah, blah, blah. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh, RJ's going to give me this 10-page essay and everything I'm going to be able to talk about. It's going to give me so much. Do you remember what your response was? Galactus is evil. Reed was wrong. I was like, okay. I was counting on the pontifications of RJ. What if Wolverine was the Lord of the Vampires? A lot of these are like kind of silly. What if the X-Men had never existed? Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, by the way, I've been doing I started with Giant Size X-Men, and this week on Sunday Comics, I'm gonna do X-Men 94 because I couldn't find it, so it's out of order. But one thing I've noticed is the first 4 or 5 appearances of the new X-Men, they didn't fight any mutants. It was just superhero adventures. They fought the Demon. I don't count Krakoa as a mutant because he's not a human. Krakoa it's no different than, say, what's the Red Ghost's apes. You know what I mean? It's a mutated thing. It wasn't born of a woman with powers beyond normal humanity. So to me, Krakoa really is just like a monster. It's like a monster movie. What if Spider-Man? Yeah. I love Captain Universe. Do you remember Captain Universe?
John, I finally found something to disagree with John about. I hated Captain Universe. I remember that character. It's like, oh, come on. They're going to make Spider-Man Captain Universe.
What's the hero that could be you?
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
It would just ruin. Whenever I see that costume, it's, oh, great. My normal comic has been disrupted for 1 month and been ruined.
Well, I liked it when it was normal people, not when Spider-Man or anything like. I don't like when Daredevil wears armor or the Punisher becomes Ghost Rider. I don't like that. But I remember in the original Micronauts, like, regular people would be given this power, like this power cosmic on tune with the Silver Surfer. And I thought that was pretty cool because every issue was like a somebody else's story. And then Grant Morrison made it the same woman over, or was it Warren Ellis? I forget, or Brian Bendis made it the same person. And once it was the same person continuously, it's just another run-of-the-mill superhero. But yeah, that terrible Steve Ditko 80s artwork didn't help. There's 2 Steve Ditkos, the 50s, 60s genius Steve Ditko, and then the 80s, I'm going to phone it in, Steve Ditko.
Although I got to say, this was a good what if. It wasn't the best in the world because this second run was not great. But what if Phoenix had not died?
Yeah. What if Phoenix had not died? Yep.
I can't remember who the heck. I'm looking at this cover trying to figure out who it is.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I don't know who it is. I want to say early Mike Mignola, but I know that's not right. I don't know. What if Phoenix was,
Got that beautiful Watcher cover there, number
yeah,
34.
what if no one was watching the Watcher? All humor issue. I don't know. I bet you that's terrible. I've said it many, many times. Comic book humor is not funny. I've avoided in my comics. I wrote one joke in Heroic Tales 2, but Renzo, I don't know if it was a language thing or if a stylistic thing. He changed. He drew it different. It was a visual gag, so I had to remove it because it just didn't work without what I described. So oh well. I tried to be funny, but funny is tough, and comic book humor is just like the Human Scorch. You get it because we said scorch instead of torch.
And this is when they started winding down. They started actually doing one idea on top of another. Because what if Wolverine had been Lord of the Vampires during Inferno? So, it's like,
oh yeah,
okay,
so yeah. What? Yeah. What? Now, what if he became Lord of the Vampires during the Mutant Massacre? What if he became Lord of the Vampires during the Atlantis attacks? Yeah, it's too self-referent. What do they say on Family Guy? It insists upon itself.
I always found that for alternate universes, DC was much more playful than Marvel. Marvel was everybody's going to die. Just
right.
Your favorite hero is going to die, and things are going to get dark and solemn. And that's why we're doing it in a what if or a throwaway. But for even the Elsewhere for DC is much more. It's darker than DC, but it's still got a hint of DC in that there's still light in there somewhere, like Holy Terror and stuff like that. Right? Gotham by Gaslight.
Yes, that's a fun one. That's Batman and Lovecraft. Yeah, that was fun. Drawn by Mike Mignola too. Yeah. Then you had Chuck Dixon doing a Batman as a pirate. He was Captain Leatherwings or something like that. That was fun. What if the Avengers? That would be a good. I don't have this series of. I have the original What If. I don't have these. So what if the original Avengers had met Galactus? Then Galactus would destroy him. You don't have anybody to fly to get the ultimate nullifier.
Oh, that's true.
What if Spider-Man had kept his 6 arms? That is officially categorized under I don't care. What if Wolverine had married Mariko? Then he would be married to Mariko. That's not like a life-changing story.
Although I got to say, a lot of these stories, it's kind of the same thing now because with all the movies, it's like, to me, they're just what if stories, right? Even if it's just a giant MCU. MCU is a what if story, if you ask me.
Yeah. I when you said Ultimate Universe, first thing I thought of was these. The second thing I thought of was pre-Crisis DC when you had like Earth 1 and Earth 2. Like those are technically different dimensions. And it's funny how DC just put so much time and effort into changing that when now everybody and their grandmother completely understands the multiverse. It wasn't all DC needed to do was just be like, okay, Black Clary belongs on Earth 1. This is Earth 2. You know what I mean? Like they just needed a little stronger. They needed a Jim Shooter to keep everything T's crossed and I's dotted. They didn't need the Crisis on Infinite Earths, although it succeeded in getting me to collect DC.
The funny thing is that there was a lead up to Crisis on Infinite Earths that most people don't know about and don't really read. And it's the fact that JLA and JSA would cross over once a year. And they did that for years and years before Crisis ever came about. So you had Earth 1 and Earth 2, basically the mightiest heroes coming together for one issue once a year. And it was just the thing that DC would do.
That's one of my earliest memories was a Justice League Justice Society team up. And what I remember it was Power Girl was holding like a portal open between worlds. And Jay Garrick was whipping up the speed to generate or whatever. And Power Girl says to Jay Garrick, "Hurry up, will you?" And Jay Garrick goes, "Leave it to Power Girl to be so impatient that she tells the fastest man of 2 worlds to hurry up." And I've always liked Power Girl after that. I always thought she was like a, what's the word? Punchy or snappy, sappy banter. You know what I mean? She wasn't a good girl like Supergirl. Power Girl will give you sassy. That's the word I was thinking of.
George says volume 2 was the best. I have to disagree. For What If, I'd say volume 1 was better. Quite honestly,
I don't have it. I gotta pick it up.
Eric is here. He says, I love many of the Superman Elseworlds stories.
Yeah, Red Sun was interesting. You know, what if he grew up in Stalinist Russia? That was interesting. I really liked the way they drew Wonder Woman in that one. You know, she looked like this like Russian Contessa with that big hairstyle, and you know, the costume was a little bit more like old fashioned. That was a cool costume.
Son of Krypton. That was
Which one was
an
that?
80s story. I think that was an 80s, but he's talking about the last Son of Krypton. I'm thinking about Superman Son of Krypton, which is an entirely different story, which came out in the early 1980s, right after, I guess not right after Crisis, but it was a great story, which seemed like it was an alternate story because it was focusing on Krypton. And they had those beautiful covers from Mike Mignola did one, I think, and John Byrne did another, and I think George Perez might have done one as well.
Yeah. Last Son of Earth. I never read that. So Superman was born on Earth and he went to Krypton. So did he lose his powers? Did he goes to Krypton and become normal? Or does he's normal on Earth and then he goes, I never read that.
So the Wingless, how you doing? He says, I'm currently reading The Question by Denny O'Neil and Starman by James Robinson.
I love that Starman. That Starman series came out at the perfect time for me. I told you I went through the super pretentious phase in the 90s. Some will argue that I'm still going through it, but James Robinson is just like the hipster guy. You know, he made Jack Knight a self-insert for him. It looks just like him, you know, tattooed guy wearing the leather jacket. But the thing about it is he made up Opal City, and I just loved Opal City. It really is one of my favorite comics. It's so good. It kind of started spinning its own wheels in the last 10 issues or so, but I really, really love that series. So good.
I have never heard of this. Eric says they also made a Western called The Kents.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I didn't get a lot of Elseworlds stuff because to me, outside of continuity really didn't matter. Wolverine versus Conan. Howdy, everybody. Derek, how you doing? Derek, good to see you.
First volume had Wolverine versus Thor. Second volume had Wolverine versus Conan. Sorry, no. It had Conan versus Thor and Conan versus Wolverine. Ryan says, what if stories are great if you fit them into the narrative that brings you back to the present reality to show the difference between what happened versus what could have happened?
Yeah, that's what the what ifs kind of did. You know, like, you know, what if Uncle Ben had lived? You know, I think Peter never would have learned his humility lesson and probably been a worse person. You know, I do like, I know it's contradictory. I didn't really get a lot of the DC Elseworlds because the Elseworlds, they weren't like, again, probably I'm wrong, but it seemed like what if was like a reaction, or what if one of these stories just went in this direction? Well, what ifs were like completely, I mean, Elseworlds were just completely different scenarios. Like Batman never was a pirate in the Spanish Main, but it's a cool setting. But you know, the Venom Punisher logo was great. Yeah, I agree. So Last Son of Earth got destroyed, and the Kent sent Clark to Krypton. Okay, did he have powers? I don't mean to harp on it, but I'm just kind of curious.
Eric, I completely agree. Eric says, I'm not a fan of the Watchmen. I do not like Alan Moore's writing superheroes. It's funny.
Yeah, this is one of the things me and RJ, we're going to fist fight about it. Next Wednesday at 8 p.m., we're gonna live stream me and RJ. He's going to wear a mask. We're going to box.
Somebody bought me for the last one of the last presents that I got was a current edition of Trivial Pursuit, and we were playing it. One of the questions was, who is considered the father of the graphic novel? And the answer was Alan Moore. And I just about flipped the board. It's like, absolutely no way. That is completely wrong.
Will Eisner invented it with the contract with God, pretty much. Yeah. So I don't. Yeah, that is completely wrong. That's like up there with the Moops. as a wrong answer. If anybody gets that joke, yeah, I do like Alan Moore, and I know it's fashionable to crash on him. I do like the Watchmen, even though, but what I like about the Watchmen is his own characters. If he wants to break and bend and stuff, it's his own character. But if you don't like Alan Moore, if you find him to be, read Tom Strong, RJ. I guarantee you would like Tom Strong, because it's just a throwback to like it's a hopeful, pulpy story. You know, Tom Strong is like a Clark Savage, Doc Savage kind of character, but he has his whole family. It's kind of wholesome. You know, it really is playful. And I would even say that the Alan Moore Supreme stories are just fun Silver Age Superman stories with like a little Alan Moore twist to them. But it's not deconstructed. It's not nasty. You know, but I do agree with you. When Alan Moore wants to be, for lack of a better term, Alan Morey, he could be kind of a downer or negative or you know. But
the only positive to that question being answered at the table was I had to tell everyone at the table who Alan Moore was, because no one knew who he was.
And you got to explain Will Eisner too. Yeah, that would have driven me crazy. And my family would have been like, "Nope, you're wrong," and then started the next turn while I'm raging. You know. Yeah. Clark is human in the story. He's raised by Jor-El. He was a weakling on Krypton, needed a special suit to walk around. He became a Green Lantern. Okay.
That actually sounds familiar now.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this. That does sound fun, though.
George says, Marvel Treasury. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about the Marvel Treasury. I love Marvel Treasury. We had the Conan one, which was a reprint of an old Conan story. I can't remember one. Like there was a reprint of 2 or 3, Conan and the Cross and a couple of others. But they colorized them and they put them in this giant volume. And I love that book so much, was because you get to see the real detail with those Conan stories. What they did was you had Buscema doing the main pencils for them, and then he shipped them off to what the heck, the guys, where the heck are they from? The Philippines. These bunch of Filipino guys would do embellishments, what they would do, right, for everything, and they made it shine with their embellishments. And when you got to see it in that size, the Treasury edition, which is giant, it's 11 by 17, I think, you got to see all the detail of every last one. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I remember I had a Fantastic Four Treasury edition, and I loved it. And then I had the Thor, the Magog story Treasury edition. But the problem was they all got destroyed. They were so big, there was like no place to store them in my house. They're like the few comics that like probably got thrown away. I mean, they must have got thrown away because I don't have the garbage in my, you know what I mean? So now I've been buying Treasury editions. If you get the Life magazine sized bags and boards, they're perfect for that. And now, but I store them on top of my long boxes because there's really, can you imagine a long box big enough for those? It would be gigantic. It would be like a coffin. Yeah. So I just store them flat on top of my comics.
There was one issue of, it was a Superman. I don't even know what it was. I have it. I still have it, but I had to send away for it. It was something that was not sold in stores. And it was almost a Treasury edition. I think it was slightly smaller than Treasury edition for DC. And it came in the mail, and it came with a poster and had a whole bunch of different stories. And I always thought, oh, that should be worth something, because it was never sold except for through the mail. And I don't know how many editions there were. And I looked it up probably 5-6 years ago. It's worth nothing. But
yeah, if you're buying comics based on value, you know, oh, this is gonna be worth something. It's like you always get screwed.
Well, I wanted the poster because I bought it when I was like 13.
Yeah, I remember the Superman versus Muhammad Ali was a Treasury sized comic, and then the Superman Spider-Man was Treasury sized. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
yeah.
The Superman Spider-Man one, I remember. We also had a Treasury edition Star Wars, where they retold the original Star Wars story.
Now that you made me realize it, I think so. Yeah, but they all got destroyed at my house. They were just too big. Which Silver Issue? Oh, I'm not doing Silver Surfer. I found this. Where did I put it now? I found it. Now I'm going to lose it again. Oh, where is it? But I've been doing the X-Men, and I skipped X-Men 94 just because I couldn't find it. Well, I found it, and I put it, here it is. So I'll be doing X-Men 94. The first appearance of the new X-Men in the regular X-Men comic. But he wants me to do Silver Surfer. So you know what? Maybe this time, I don't know. I am trying to get
he's booing you in the comments.
No, I'm getting booed. You put it in my head, and I started talking about the Silver Surfer with Mephisto. What is that, number 2 or 3? I might still do that, Eric. I think you might have tweaked my interest in that. I think I might do that. You know what? Eric, you win. You win, Eric. He's just so handsome, Eric.
Haven't actually watched any of this, but supposedly I've just watched some things on YouTube that they have now ruined one of the best villains I think that Marvel has ever had, which is Mephisto, by making his first appearance be in Ironheart, the miniseries.
People are not enjoying it. I mean, it's not that I was avoiding it. Avoiding it meant, it was in my path in the first place. Like I just truly am done with Marvel. Like Marvel movies and TV shows, I really, really have to get positive reinforcement or feedback before I'll watch them. There's infinite amount of stuff I could do with my time. I'm not going to hate watch it, and I'm not going to just start watching Ironheart on the hopes that it's good because it was based on Marvel. Now the Marvel shows are based on things that I didn't like. So, I'm pretty good. I ignore a lot of stuff on YouTube. If you guys know what's been going on with me lately, there's a lot of stuff I'm ignoring now. But why watch Ironheart if you don't like it? Like, I don't understand hate watching. Wasn't Mephisto with the Nicolas Cage movie? No, that was Blackheart, Mephisto's son, right?
Yep. I'm going through the covers here to find the Ann Nocenti run of Daredevil, because besides the X-Men run, I think that's the best portrayal of Mephisto. There's an X-Men versus and stuff like that, but let's see here. It starts with Fall of the Mutants. Let me share a screen here. I think it's Ann Nocenti, because I always tell the story. I got into Daredevil because my brother collected all the Frank Miller stuff, but I got into it right here. This double-sized issue of Daredevil 252, which was part of the Fall of the Mutants tie-in, and it was basically New York in a heat wave like you're at today, John. But we had a heat wave where I was waiting to get on a ferry, and I had my 2 brothers, me and my father, and we're all shoved into this black Firebird, and we couldn't get on the ferry because there were just too many people trying to get on the ferry. So we had to sit in the parking lot all day while my father walked across the ferry to get his stuff done, and then came back like 6 hours later, and we were just boiling in this black T-bird.
You guys wonder what the 70s was like? The 70s was being trapped in a station wagon, no seatbelts, while your mom smoked, while the air conditioner barely did anything. That's the 70s.
And the only thing that kept us going was there was a tiny little shop that had comics and it had air conditioning, and we went in a couple of times, but they wouldn't let us in there unless we bought something. And I bought this issue of Daredevil, and I just read it over and over and over again that day.
Yep. Yeah. Nothing like a comic book to keep a kid quiet on a 4-hour drive someplace, Yeah. I remember, I think it was Daredevil 67 or 4. It's either 43 or 67. Those are the 2 numbers. But it was Daredevil talking to an older black guy, and the black guy was blind, and Daredevil was telling him that he was blind. And I just remember it was the very first Daredevil I ever read, and I was like, how could he be a blind superhero? And it was the very first time of headcanon, a term that I absolutely despise, but it's no other, I just decided in my mind, Daredevil's not blind. He's a superhero because it's ridiculous to have a blind super. And then later on, I got into Daredevil and I learned about the radar sense and everything like that. But I just remember as a little kid, I'm like, no, there's no way. Makes no sense. So I made up my own rules for Daredevil.
This issue 265, I guess there was a filler issue here, but this is where they redefine Mephisto with
Right.
Ann Nesenti. And
And that
260,
goat head.
263, 265, 266. And this is the only time that I know of that Mephisto, because that's supposed to be Mephisto in the background in case anybody's
Right. That
wondering.
is such a cool design, I think. That's creepy.
It's the only storyline they actually use that design for Mephisto, done by John Romita Jr. And that's where they started to introduce Blackheart as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Poor Ann Nesenti had the misfortune of following up Frank Miller. You know, it's like, you want to go on after Jimi Hendrix? No, I don't. But right, that's the story of Woodstock. Is Jimi Hendrix didn't want to go on after the Who, and the Who didn't want to go on after Jimi Hendrix. So like somebody, once, twice, three, shoot. So Jimi Hendrix is like, all right, I'm gonna pull out all the stops. I'm gonna go nuts because I'm going on after the Who. I'm going crazy. That's what he did that. Or was it Monterey at Sanford? Whatever. But what does this have to do with comic books? But you know what I mean? It's like, oh, John, you're writing the Fantastic Four. When? As soon as John Byrne's done. I'm like, what am I going to do?
This is why I always thought that if I was going to save Marvel, I would cut it off at like 1996, restart the timeline, and have it be a Mephisto story. Just because we're talking about alternate timelines and things like alternate universes, because I know it's not really the same thing, but what is it? Belisario? Yeah. In his version of hell, where time is limbo. Well, it's limbo, so time doesn't exist. You got a whole bunch of alternate versions of Sims and of the X-Men and Magic and all those kinds of things, which all occur in the Magic miniseries.
It's funny because it just shows you how much it bothers us that we're actually like working on solutions how to fix Marvel. I told you my fix, right? Is
you did?
Yeah. It all comes down to Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Like, she's in a fight and she starts to get stressed out and she kind of reverts back into like a more masculine form. Like, you have to acknowledge all of these things. So like, and they notice it. They're like, what just happened? She goes, yeah, that happens every once in a while because I do share. That's her origin, is she does share Marvel's DNA. So she does have two sets of DNA. She has a male's DNA and a female's DNA. So I would say like all that masculine stuff really did happen. It wasn't a stylistic choice. Like when she gets stressed or she draws upon too much power, she looks more and more like Marvel. And then what happened was Reed Richards studies are just like, yeah, you have two sets of DNA and they're combating each other. You have cancer, just like it killed Marvel. So they're like, oh, what do we do? And it's like, the only chance is to extract all of the Marvel DNA. So they extract all the Marvel DNA. Now they have Marvel, Captain Marvel, but he's a clone or whatever you want to call it, but he has no memories. So now she's beautiful like she used to be. She got rid of issue related. No, the origin was Captain Marvel jumped in front of a bomb blast and the bomb radiation went through Marvel and then penetrated her. So she, like, Marvel's DNA was like spliced onto her DNA, and that's how she got her power. So she literally has Marvel's DNA. So now we have a Marvel, but he's a tabula rasa. He has no memory or anything like that. He's, just because you're a clone doesn't mean you have. So now he's learning who am I? Who am I modeled after? And they're flying around. She's beautiful and sexy again and everything. Her old personality. And he's just like, oh, okay. And he's like, and you have cosmic senses. I never developed the cosmic senses. You see if you have cosmic awareness. And he's like, oh, okay. And he concentrates. He's like, wow. What are these radiation waves that are hitting everybody? And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, there's radiation from the sun. Because there's also radiation from this like bunker in Manhattan. And it's hitting everybody. And they're like, huh? And they go and investigate, and they find a mad bomb in the subterranean tunnels where I've been working, and they go back to a Jack Kirby Captain America comic where there was 3 mad bombs. And the first mad bomb was powerful enough to drive everybody on a city block crazy. The second mad bomb was big enough to make everybody on a state crazy. The third mad bomb was big enough to make everybody on a continent crazy. And Captain America deactivated them. but they didn't know there was a fourth mad bomb, and it made everybody on Earth crazy. So now this new Captain Marvel and the old Captain Marvel, they get rich, they go out and they disconnect it. And all of a sudden everybody goes, we've been acting weird for years, and this is why. And Iceman goes, I'm not gay. This, you know what I mean? And then the X-Men are like, we've been supremacist terrorists living on, and they all realize all the horrible things that they've been doing. They all realize that they've been acting out of character. And now they just like, we got to repair our reputation. We got, and they just go on because to me, to retcon stuff drives me crazy. Like, it happened. We have to acknowledge that it happened, in my way of thinking. So there we go. We acknowledge the past, and we bring back one of my favorite characters, Captain Marvel, acknowledging the fact that the real one is dead, and this has like a new personality. There we go. What do you think?
Well, I'll give you. I'll since you gave your whole spiel now, John. I got to give mine now.
Give me the whole spiel. That's what we're here for. Nerdy detail. I want nerdy detail on
nerdy detail is that when you had the issues of Mephisto versus X-Men and Mephisto versus Fantastic Four, he actually kidnaps Franklin Richards, and so at that point, Franklin Richards actually spins off an entirely separate pocket universe, because he wants to protect the normal. Basically, he's holding the entire Marvel universe in a pocket universe. And from that point on, Mephisto basically becomes the person in control of the Earth that we see from that point on in the comics. And so what you have is basically the storyline would follow the fact that Franklin Richards is also stuck in Mephisto's realm, so he can't actually get out in order to reestablish the universe. But then he finds someone else there who he falls in love with, which would be the unborn child developed into a fully grown woman, being Peter Parker's daughter. And the two of them escape from Mephisto's realm, and it would have a side plot of the fact that someone's also trying to break into Mephisto's realm. If I could swing it, it would be the fact that Darkseid pierced the veil between the two universes because he's looking for the anti-life equation, and he thinks that Mephisto's universe is actually the writ large anti-life equation, because he's able to do this to the entire universe. And so while the two of them are battling, you have the two characters of Franklin Richards and his girlfriend, which would be, I can't remember her name, but the daughter of Peter Parker, and they break out of Mephisto's actual hell and reestablish the universe as it should be, whereas everyone realizes that this entire time what they've been doing is basically been as servants of the devil.
Yeah, I love it. I love it too, because I'd like to, we've all seen the movie Misery. In Kathy Bates captures what's his name, James Caan, and she's telling him, you got to write Misery, and Misery died in the last book, and he's just like, oh, and she wakes up. He's like, no, she was in the coffin, she was in the ground. You can't erase that. You have to start from there. And I'm like, all right, Kathy Bates. I agree with you. You can't. To me, I'm such a continuity freak that I don't like when even though the continuity is bad, it's still there, and we have to acknowledge it. Because that just means me and you, RJ, we get to write our favorite Fantastic Four Spider-Man run, and then Eric the Guapo comes in and gets to dismiss what we wrote. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, and that's why editorial is important. You have to consider, how is this damaging and that's what Denny O'Neil did. Every time a story was sent to him, he said, how does this impact Batman overall? Okay, we could do this. How does this impact whatever overall? Okay, that's a good story, but we can't do that because that's going to fundamentally change the way people think about Batman or Spider-Man. So so anyway, that was a lot of concepts that just kind of got me crazy, but I like your idea because it acknowledges the past. It acknowledges that there's a problem, and it comes up with a comic book solution that people will buy. Just we wake up and, hey, the last couple of years didn't happen. That's not satisfying, especially in a world where there are cosmic cubes and Doctor Stranges and Beyonders. And also, snapping your fingers and changing everything is not satisfying either. But you had a good, logical comic book explanation that has precedent. So I'll buy that. Yeah, I like it. Michael Bertosky says both ideas are interesting. If they both bring us back to like they're all heroes again, you don't have to use my idea. Use RJ's. You know, that's the end goal. Is we come back to a good morally set DC universe where Mr. Fantastic is not a jerk and Peter Parker is not checking out Human Torch's rear end every time he flames on. You know, ahead of his time.
I still get notifications and watch a few of Wes's videos over at Critical Thinking, and the man is just tortures himself by still reading Marvel and DC comics.
Yeah, well, that's part of me is I'm so glad that I do what I do. You know what I mean? Nobody comes to me for quick takes about Ironheart and stuff like that because they know I don't watch it. You know, but just imagine like. I set up a YouTube channel or I stick bamboo shoots underneath my nails. Oh my God. That like the worst case scenario would be that you're very successful. So it's like every day I make $10,000, but every day I have to stick bamboo shoots under my nails. You know what I mean? At what point Wes is psychologically sticking bamboo shoots under his nails. And I'm glad he's doing it, not me. Now, Wes is a good guy. I've been on his channel a few times. He's a good guy. You know, but you suffer so I don't have to, Wes. Thank you. I salute you.
He's basically saying that they're starting to hire early 2000s writers again, as far as I can tell. And I'm thinking that's the problem. That's the problem right there. That's where everything just went off the rails.
Yeah. Like Chris Claremont's still going to conventions. The guy could write. You know, what are they doing with? I heard a rumor that they're paying him a salary not to write because they just don't want him to go to another comic book company. You know, all right, I getting paid not to work. That sounds pretty sweet. But they're already paying him. Give him the X-Men. You know, give him something. He's there. You know, Chuck Dixon jokes that he wouldn't take the pay cut. But I have a feeling that if you offered Chuck Dixon Fantastic Four, Graham Nolan drawing it, I think they would take it. Can you imagine a Chuck? He already talked about some ideas that he had for the Fantastic Four, and I would love to see them. You know?
Chuck never wrote Fantastic Four ever, did he?
No, he was in a bizarre little corner of Marvel. He did Savage Sword of Conan for years. He did the Punisher, and he said the closest he came to mainstream Marvel was he did the Marvel Knights.
That's because he was there during the time of Bobby Chase. Because what they did at that point was they had 5 editors in chiefs. Each of them had their own little fiefdom of Marvel, and they didn't cross over.
Right. And he said he got crap because he had the Punisher fight Ulik the Troll. You know, and people like, Punisher doesn't fight. He goes, yeah, but what if Ulik the Troll attacks and the Punisher's there? I mean, it's not like the Punisher has a power to not be around, you know, superhuman things. So, you know, Chuck Dixon's like, yeah, why not? It's fun, right? Punisher fights Ulik the Troll. Why not?
Chuck Dixon versus Walter Simonson, basically.
Yeah. He has a great, I don't want to spoil it, but he was hinting about what he would do if he was to write the Fantastic Four. And if you know a lot about comics to interpret the hints, it would be a great story. He had a great Punisher story that he was told he couldn't write, where Frank Castle got word that this like terrorist cell or Mexican cartel or something was smuggling in a weapon of mass destruction. So the Punisher just drops what he's doing and he offs them all. And then when he finds the weapon of mass destruction, it's a Fing Fang Foom egg. You know, they were going to hatch this egg and let this dragon, you know what I mean? And they're like, no, that's not a Punisher story. And he's like, if it was a neutron bomb, would it be a Punisher story? Like, this is the world the Punisher lives in. I don't know. I kind of like that story.
I remember, for the life of me, one of the things that I cannot remember clearly in my mind, see if you can help me out, John. So I think that the Walter Simonson run of Thor is probably the best run of comics ever, but I never quite remember correctly how in the world the Midgard serpent suddenly it was Fing Fang Foom. He like Thor was fighting Fing Fang Foom,
Right.
and he basically crushed him with a hammer, and then the Midgard serpent came out of the flesh of Fing Fang Foom. And I don't remember what in the world. How did that happen?
I don't remember that story. No, no.
That is one of the best. Like I remember, let me see if I can pull this up. I remember redrawing all the Walter Simonson covers for Thor when he did it. There's some really beautiful ones, especially for the Midgard serpent. It's just like spectacularly beautiful. Let's see if I can pull it up all of a sudden. As Journey into Mystery. Let's see. What is 300? I think it's 350. Yeah, there we go. Let's see. We'll pull this up. Where is that cover?
Oh, I love that. This ask me again. This is like either the best or the second best run of comics. The Walt Simonson Thor. I think it's my most reread run of comics.
Yeah, me too.
Is it okay?
There's the Fing Fang Foom issue, and then it turns into the Midgard Serpent, which is 380. I can remember, like I redrew this 381 several different times.
See your art. Do you still have your art? We should do
stuck in a folder somewhere, but it's basically all I did was I didn't trace. I would just redraw things, right? Most of the time.
Here's my. Can we? You know what? I'll show a better version. Put it down for a second. I don't want to. I sent this image to somebody else. I'll show you this my latest drawing of it. I had a dream, and I made up a character and a story, and I sent it to Renzo, and he's working on it right now. So, but here is an example of my artwork. There we go, and you can share it whenever you want. There you go. There's my artwork. Wouldn't you guys pay for that? Aren't you glad I met Renzo? But this is a mythological based character. You see that spear? It's the tooth from the Grey Sisters, and he has a female partner who carries around the eye from the Grey Sisters. I changed the helmet because Renzo pointed out that there's a video game character that looks too much like this. So he has a traditional Greek helmet. I changed that, but he wears the golden fleece, and so he has all the powers of all like the Greek demigods, like Achilles and Hercules and all that stuff. Yeah, he has the tooth. You remember when Perseus meets the Grey Sisters? They share one tooth and they share one eye.
Right.
Well, he and his wife find that, and he takes the tooth and she takes the eye, and he wears the golden fleece, and they're dealing with mythological creatures. I'm not telling the name or anything like that because until Renzo starts drawing it. But anyway, I think it would be funny if me and you did one episode of a. Can everybody hear us? I stopped sharing.
Oh, sorry.
If we shared our art, I'm sure your art is so much better than mine.
I'm trying to find it right now. So you talk a little bit more. I got to see if I can.
Oh, yeah. I'll answer some of these questions. Tony Grigo, I'll come back to your question. Is that a spear? Yes, he takes in Perseus when he Perseus when he fights Medusa, he gets the head of Medusa. He stops in the and he meets the Grey Sisters. The Grey Sisters live in the Atlas Mountains. So in the Atlas Mountains, there's the three sisters, and one of them has a tooth, and they pull out the tooth and they hand it to the other two sisters so they can eat, and they have an eye that they share. So they're gone, and he finds the tooth and the eye, and he takes the tooth and fashions a spear. Oh, that's good. And then his wife takes the eye and she uses it for like oracles and true seeing and things like that. That is okay. That's better than I expected.
There's my Larry Stroman copying Larry Stroman Wolfbane from X Factor.
Yeah, the Stygian witches from Clash of the Titans. Yeah, they're called the Grey Sisters. Well, it looks like a bag. I didn't say I drew well. It's okay. So one day I want to make an art of Heroic Tales and have like all of Renzo's sketches. And now I have other guys working for me too. So we'll have all their sketches. And then I want to contrast it with, because I still have all the original sketches that I sent to Renzo of my characters. And it's just so funny to see what I sent to him. Man, the first picture of the patriarch, it looks like the father from South Park. whatever that guy's name is, the geologist, Randy. It looks like Randy as the patriarch. It's so bad. It's so bad. RJ, am I allowed to answer this question by Tony Grigo? What my thoughts on the mayoral race in New York?
You go right ahead.
So those of you who don't know, Andrew Cuomo ran for mayor, and I forget the other guy's name, but the other guy is he's only been in the States for 7 years. He's from Uganda. I don't know if he became a citizen or what, but he came from Uganda, came to the United States, ran for mayor, and now he's the Democratic primary. Now he's a full-on communist, and he's a full-on like Islamic supremacist, and he beat Andrew Cuomo, and as to be the so now they're going to have the main election, the Democrat contender versus the Republican contender. And all I got to say is, Andrew Cuomo, you shouldn't have killed all the people that would have voted for you. All those old people that you put into nursing homes and then died of COVID, they would have voted for you. So, and I'm actively rooting for this guy to become the mayor. I want New York to get so bad that you know how an alcoholic has to hit rock bottom before they realize they need help? Because if we get a Republican mayor and he cleans up New York, these people are still going to be like, it's still bad. It's just, I want them. We gave you everything you wanted. New York is a full-on socialist. We're going to have government. He wants to have government supermarkets. So like the government subsidized supermarkets. So all the bodegas,
price control, that never works.
Right. All the bodegas, all the restaurants are going to go out of business. New York is going to be the worst place in the world. And then maybe, just maybe, these crazy progressives will realize, okay, we're wrong. We're wrong.
Make New York beg for Punisher again.
Right. I got 3 or 4 years left before I'm out of here. And me and my wife keep talking about where we're going to go. So, just the thing is, the first thing he wants to do is to fund the police. It's going to make the death wish New York look like a good thing. It's going to be so bad. It's going to be
Escape from New York, New York.
Yes, New York. Yes, it's going to, and it's funny because on Twitter now people are like, nobody wants to move. Texas is hot. It's smelly. Everybody's trying to say like ex-New Yorkers don't come to our state. So, yeah, it's going to be Gotham City. George Morales, we are going to see Gotham City in real life. We are. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And
that's really funny. They used to show the pictures of the old mayor of Chicago. I can't remember what her name was, but yeah, they look like they were from Gotham City.
Yeah, when they would juice. Yeah. We need a Snake Plissken. So like, unfortunately, like I'm an electrician in the 5 boroughs, so it's going to be bad. But like, I don't know. It's just give them enough rope is what I feel for New York. The only way to fix it is to just, but the federal government has to not bail out New York. You know what I mean? Like they can't. My biggest fear is this guy does all this, New York just gets sunk, and then we have a Democrat president who just like, okay, we'll bail you out, so there's no consequences to their actions. You know what I mean? Like we have to have like a Gerald Ford. Remember when he said drop dead when New York asked for money? And then New York had to balance their budgets. That's what I'm hoping. Best case scenario, we get another Republican or 2 presidents for like 16 years. New York is a hole in the wall. Nobody's bailing them out, and they just the people just rise up and like, we got to get rid of this nonsense. There you go. John, cash out and move fast. I'm trying. I'm gonna move next door to RJ. How's that, RJ? Would you mind me as a neighbor?
I got hundreds of acres, John. You go right ahead.
There you go. Me and RJ. Not right. RJ, you come over, play board games. We'll talk comic books. Me and RJ will be the only 2 family. We'll be 2 houses on RJ Island. I won't come over too much. I promise. I'll leave you alone.
So,
what? So
what's the name of the guy who directed Escape from New York? I can't for the life of me. He's like one of my favorite directors. John Carpenter, yes.
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing, okay? You want to explain why today exists with the types of stories that we have? Look at John Carpenter. Why? Because he did movie after movie after movie, like Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New York, where he was trying to show people that these were ridiculous characters doing ridiculous things and they're not really heroes. But everybody said, no, that's the hero. And that's why these left, because he's a left wing, not so much a nut, but he's very left wing, right? And he was trying to show, you know, this is New York because of all the, like, Snake Plissken is not an actual hero, neither is Jack Burton or anything else. But everybody watched it and go, no, Jack Burton's a hero, right? Or Snake Plissken is a hero. And so, since these light-handed liberal types couldn't actually sell their stories and sell their message through light-handed stories, that's why you have what you have today. They went through decades and decades of trying to sell it to you underhandedly, and everybody just took it as, I'm going to interpret this as I want to interpret it. So now they got to shove it down our throat and say there's no other way. You got to have Riri Williams or, you know, any of these characters that are just laid on as thick as possible.
Yeah. And we have a whole generation of writers now. I mean, it's funny because the 90s were just a blink away, you know, but the 90s are 30 years. That's a whole generation of kids just raised to hate America, you know, and now they're the writers. They're the people that are taking over. Like I consider Marvel and DC Comics to be our mythology. Like, that's Greek mythology to Americans. Now, could you imagine Greek mythology written by people that hate Greece? That's what we're getting now. We're getting superhero stories. Superman, you know, Superman is our Hercules. You know, Batman is our Sherlock Holmes and Odysseus. You know, the Fantastic Four or you know, our family story, you know, but written by people that hate this stuff. So that's what we get.
That's what I keep saying. I'm sure someone's going to say this in the comments, but that's one of the first videos I did with this on Amanat interview with Fast Company. She said, these stories are our mythology for America. Therefore, we have to use them to push progressive ideology.
Right. Use is the key word. Yeah. Use. Yeah. Say what Jack Burton always says. The check is in the mail. Have you heard about the messaging writers of the Matrix was trying to create? Absolutely. The Matrix came out, the first movie, and it was brilliant and it was exciting and it was fun, and it should have been it. And then the other 2-3 movies came out, and it was just like, oh, it was so big. Now we're going to pretend that it was part of a bigger trilogy. And the first movie I think was written by some woman, and then like maybe tampered with the Wachowski brothers. And then the other movies were written by the Wachowski brothers, and it's clear that woman was the genius behind it all, you know. And now they're like, oh, it's trans messaging and stuff like that. It's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's absolutely not. It's you know. But what do you want me to do?
Okay, well, we've hit our hour and people are going to bed, wow. John. And I think that what you're telling me before the stream is you need to get some sleep. So yeah. We'll cap it at an hour. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and thank you very much, John, for just having a random live stream. I like talking about random comic, just random comic topics. It's like we walk into a comic store.
Yeah, that's what I like about this. Yes, random nonsense. And I like riffing off the chat. Not ripping off the chat. That's not what I do. Riffing off the chat. It's fun when the chat asks questions, and you know, it keeps it interesting, keeps it fun, and it keeps it fresh. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Oh, and just remember that John's book is still open, and the link for it is in the description. We saw the trailer at the first, and the sign-up page for Fade to Blue, which is mine, is also in the description of this video. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much, John, for showing up.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody.